This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. My name is Sheldon Alexander. Rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. And as always, I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, that is Matt Russell, sports betting professional. Why'd you get thrown off by that? Is Vladdy the only man, myth, and legend going on right now? Is that it?
That's right. George Springer, things of that nature. Thanks, buddy. No,
I'll finish off the intro, though. Matt Russell, sports betting professional. Got to get the particulars in. Okay. Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. Matt Russell, how are you doing today?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Thank you for that. I was ready to stomp all over the intro. I mean, I figured once you start, you hit me with a man, myth, legend. I mean, the first part is definitely correct biologically. And then the other stuff is, I mean, that's completely up for debate. And we'll see by the end of the show where people are sort of landing on this, because I got to tell you, like, it is Wednesday morning and we got a team in the World Series that you're repping pretty hard right now. And the Monday Night Football doubleheader, which just goes to all hours of the night. And you get yourself in the position where over at The Window, like, we try to have the maximum amount of fun for these primetime games. And what the result is with these Monday Night Football games that start at 10 o'clock Eastern time is that it's 1:30 in the morning and I'm trying to get Woody Marks into the end zone for a touchdown. You know what I mean? And it's just like, it sounded like a good idea, like a day before when I make the bet and I write the article. But at 1:30 in the morning on Monday, just looking for a plus 250 anytime touchdown with Woody Marks and the Texans just refusing to run the ball on the goal line and eventually throwing him one, where you're just like, man, like, this is going to ruin the rest of my week, but at least we got Woody Marks home for an anytime touchdown. So, like, we're trying to have a good time, but, like, you know, I'm too old for this bleep when it comes to 10 p.m. start times and Woody Marks anytime touchdowns. So, but, you know, I'm told there's more football to come this week, and we'll figure it out here on the fly Wednesday morning for the NFL.
We will figure it out. This is week 8 in the NFL. And for the folks who might be new here, first off, where have you been the last 7 weeks? Because we've been having fun here on the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. But here's what we do. I'm going to give you a pick, and then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, where it could be heading into kickoff. Then I come out on the other side with a much more informed pick. I try to play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinced me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen. But that's the joke. That's the bit. That's the show. I say the goal is to win more than I lose. And let's be honest, the vibes are high. Maybe that's why I'm hyped. Might be Vladdy. It might be the vibes high on the pod, but an 11-4 week last week on the pod. Finally in business here. Last 2 weeks, 20-10. I'll take that. Needed that to be back on the plus side here. We are so back. Vibes are high. Hot up in the 6 right now. All that other fun stuff. What other cliches can I throw out there right now, right? But we will keep the good times moving, heading into week 8, as mentioned, because weeks in week 8, a lot of bye weeks going on. Got the Lions, Raiders, Rams, Cards, Seahawks, and Jags all on a bye.
Jeez.
So none of those teams are playing on Thursday night, but we do have a Thursday nighter for you, and that is the Vikings at the Chargers. Chargers, 3-point favorites at home. Vikings coming off a loss to Philly. Carson Wentz still getting the start despite a sequence last week that included interception, -8-yard fumble, interception, and somewhere in the mix getting crushed by Jalen Carter as well. Meanwhile, the Chargers ran into the red-hot Colts. Poor Justin Herbert. He's also getting crushed because his O-line still not helping him much at all. Somehow still threw for like 420 yards, but just complete madness here. I can't lay points with the Chargers and that O-line that they got surrounding Justin Herbert. Vikings defense, I feel like, is the most trustworthy, even though it might not have showed it last week. But for the most part, maybe the most trustworthy unit in this game. I don't know. This is a weird one. Thursday night, I don't know. I'm taking the points. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a difficult one for me here. I just like being able to gobble up
Mhm.
the points with the Vikings, even though obviously I don't trust Carson Wentz, but I mean, here we are.
Right. Yeah, I mean the Carson Wentz thing, right? Like I think Carson Wentz is a viable backup quarterback in the NFL. There's a lot of dudes who are viable backup quarterbacks in the NFL, but the thing with the backup quarterback is, you know, you can use like Jacoby Brissett as an example, or some of these other like good quality backup quarterbacks. They're backup quarterbacks because you don't want them in there for 17 games. And we're kind of getting to a point here, you know, 3, 4, 5 games into the Carson Wentz experience where you start to realize like, yeah, like once in a while, Carson Wentz, like that's going to be able to work, particularly when, from a market perspective, the team gets sort of rated downwards because, oh man, they have to go to Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
And then because they have a couple of good showings, which, you know, honestly, in this case, it's what the Jake Browning fiasco against the Bengals, right? Carson Wentz kind of gets, you know, the positive side of that, where it's like, it could be worse. See that guy over there? Like, could be worse than me. And so then they go, you know, overseas and they play a couple of games there. They win one, they lose one, but it's like a super close game where they probably shouldn't have won against the Browns. And so they come back, and there's probably more about the Vikings defense and the Eagles picking on Isaiah Rodgers, former Eagles cornerback, by the way, right? A team that needs cornerbacks. The Eagles were like, Isaiah Rodgers, we're fine with letting you go. And then sure enough, as soon as they play Isaiah Rodgers, they, you know, absolutely take him apart in that game. And so I just look at this and I go like, on a short week, Carson Wentz, like I think the Carson Wentz stint here is headed, you know, downwards. And you're going to end up getting the Vikings going, yeah, let's just go back to JJ McCarthy and see how this goes. That's not going to happen on a short week. JJ McCarthy, who again, like, we don't really remember his injury against the Atlanta Falcons, and somehow it's lasted 4 or 5 weeks.
It's been a while.
And yeah, and so it'd be a bit of a tough spot to put him, not because JJ McCarthy isn't ready on a short week, it's because the rest of the guys are playing on a short week. And so I think this is sort of the last of the Carson Wentz stint here. Listen, he'll be back. All of these guys eventually kind of come back in, especially if the McCarthy thing doesn't go well. I think we're going to see McCarthy in this following week. But more to the point here with the Chargers, and why I like the Chargers kind of burying the lead here, is, you know, you mentioned it with regards to Herbert. And yeah, the offensive line is pretty brutal, but they were asked last week to keep up with a Colts team that, like, we are still not giving enough credit to.
Juggernaut.
Yeah, like absolute wagonry. And think about it last year with the Commanders and the Eagles facing each other in the NFC title game, right? Which, if you had said all throughout the season, if you had some sort of magic ball and you were like, no, guys, like, yeah, the Eagles are going to be in the NFC title game, but it's going to be the Commanders. It's going to be, and you're like, what? They're winning games on Hail Marys? Like, this whole thing is like all kind of flukish. I think we're headed for like a Colts Chiefs AFC title game where it's the one team that you always kind of expect is going to be there, and the team that like people refuse to give full credit to. And by the way, it's not like the Colts are winning these games like luckily. They are just absolutely wailing on teams. And it's one thing when you beat the Dolphins and the Raiders, but it's another thing when you go to LA and beat like a still pretty good Chargers team. And my point with the Herbert thing is like, yeah, he had to keep up with the Colts, and that 400 yards and the 300 the week before against the Dolphins are indicating to me that even with this bum offensive line, because they have 2 of their offensive tackles, and by the way, Joe Alt might be back. Like, he was sort of trending to potentially be back last week. Again, the short week doesn't necessarily help. Every day kind of matters when we're talking about like high ankle sprains and stuff like that. But again, like, I'm watching the Vikings get beat deep on a bunch of plays there whenever the Eagles went to it. And if the Eagles are beating you deep, through the passing game, like, I think Justin Herbert can do that as well. And you and I talked about last week with regards to the Chargers being favored by 1.5 or 2 points, and just kind of looking at the ratings and going like, I don't have this, man. Like, I have this at the very least a pick 'em. And, the idea that the Chargers, again, were getting giving 1.5 or 2 points, like, not a drastic difference, but like still didn't really make any sense to me. Yeah. And now, like, the Chargers opened this game only like -2. And there was some -2s and this -2.5, and those quickly got bet up. But think about it that way, right? Like, you're looking at the Colts and the Vikings as 1 point differences from a market perspective. It's like, no, of course
Yeah.
not, right? Like if those two teams met on a neutral, like I'd have the Colts by like 3.5 points. And so, immediately that gets bet, right? The
I got
the
you.
2.5. And that's why we're at 3. We're actually at -3, -120. So if you want the Vikings, you are getting, a cheap price on the +3. We may be headed to 3.5 here because the only way that last week's line makes any sense. And listen, I get it. The Colts ended up blowing them out. But using the ratings that the Chargers rating right now and the Colts rating, which of course we're going to get to a little bit later on, the Colts would be a 2-point favorite in LA if they played that game again. And like we can all sort of like nod our head and kind of go like, yeah, that makes sense. They did win pretty comfortably, but that's still a 3.5-point swing off of one game. When, by the way, the Vikings weren't particularly good last week either. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just looking at it going like, man, we are one game away here from everybody going, all right, let's get back to the JJ McCarthy plan. Meanwhile, the Chargers, having lost that game last week, obviously they pulled the one out before against the Dolphins. Like they got to keep pace here. And so I trust Harbaugh. I trust Herbert, even with the shaky offensive line. The run game's not particularly going, but I trust Herbert to be able to throw it around on the Vikings. And I think the Eagles, showed to the rest of the league that like there's some holes in the Vikings secondary. And if you can just look and go Isaiah Rodgers, a guy who was a hole for the Eagles last year, and go, yep, that's the guy we want to pinpoint. The Chargers have enough dudes, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Keenan Allen, our over at the window, our new hero, Oronde Gadsden. These guys can, take apart the Vikings defense. And I think Herbert's going to be ready for the stuff that Flores has sort of cooked up for him. So yeah, man, I like the Chargers a ton in this game. And I think they're sort of being, undervalued, obviously because they got hammered by the Colts. But it's like, I think we're going to look back and be like, yeah, the Colts hammered a lot of pretty decent teams this season. And, again, the Colts could easily be undefeated here with a couple of different breaks that have, not gone their way. So, yeah, I like the Chargers here, and I think we're getting, a little bit of value here still at 3.
That sound means the pick has been changed.
I didn't even see the sound. I was all excited. I was waiting to hear the sound. I don't know. Like it didn't come.
You didn't hear it? You didn't hear it?
Hopefully the audience heard it. I didn't get it.
I didn't
get it. Just so everybody knows, I didn't get it. But I'm psyched. Okay. Wow. We got the
thought I was just like awkwardly pausing and staring at you.
I did. I was like, did we drop out? There's no sound.
No, the pick has been changed. Chargers -3. This is the classic reason why I enjoy doing this pod so much. The discussion of where the line was, where it is, where it could be going, but also bringing up the market, comparing last week's line versus the teams, comparing it to this week's line. And it's like, wait a second, the Colts and the Vikings, that's not the same weight class. Not at all. Not at all. Pick has been changed. We have obviously a ton more picks to get to, but first, football is back, and so is your big shot at big wins with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's how to play. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, from breakout rookies to elite QBs, and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. And I like Justin Jefferson at more than 79.5 receiving yards. Give me Ladd McConkey for less than 55.5 receiving yards. And Carson Wentz, give me more than 11.5 rushing yards. And here's a kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code CLUTCH. That's code CLUTCH. Play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call. Ride the upside in partnership with DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. bonus awarded as non-withdrawable pick six bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos. As we move on to Sunday's action. And you know what? I'm happy that Sunday's action doesn't include an early morning wake up for, first time in a while. We will take that. And we will also take the Bears, who are traveling to Baltimore, to take on the Ravens. Ravens, 6.5-point favorites. And I'll start with the Bears here, right? Bears have won 4 in a row, but really haven't beaten anyone, right? We're talking Dallas, Vegas, Washington, New Orleans. But their run game appears to be alive all of a sudden, right? I mean, I know it was the Saints. I get it, right? But Kate still looking super shaky, but they figured out, let's simplify things. Let's get the run going. And they've come up with, wins against some pretty bad teams. But what are the Ravens, right? Luckily, coming off their bye, Lamar should be back. I'm assuming this is a Lamar line. I'm assuming, right? But more importantly, as we've been talking about the last few weeks with the Ravens pre-bye, what about their defensive injuries? That's going to be my first question for you here, just in terms of who's going to be back in the lineup, because we know they've been banged up. They were in desperate need of said bye week, and we know just how important having their key guys on defense is. And of course, Lamar's going to get the headlines, but I got to know what's going on with the defense first. And for that reason, I'm leaning on the Bears plus 6.5 to start.
Yeah, I think the Bears stuff is kind of obvious, right? Where it's they've won 4 straight. Things are going pretty well there. And then how are they being treated in the marketplace? They have been bumped up. Finally, they weren't. Last week I was looking at that game, and over at the window we do a round robin underdog moneyline parlay that we affectionately call the rump. And I really wanted to include the Bengals on Thursday night. And so when you include a Thursday night game as your underdog outright, which ended up winning, you have to make the bet with the other 4 teams included. And so I'm looking on Sunday's slate, and of course the pair of games on Monday, and I'm just all right, there's a couple of point spreads that I know are too high, which means the money line on the underdog is valuable. That would have been the Cardinals hosting the Packers and the Giants going to Denver. So I'm okay, we're going to include those 2 games. And then after that, I was man, the rest of this group is pretty grim. Now, it turns out that the first 7 games on Sunday, all the favorites covered. And that includes the international, London game, and all 6 of the 1:00 games. And I included the Saints in the moneyline parlay because I'm high variance, couple of teams or whatever. But the more I look throughout the week, and even through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I'm just looking at this going this Bears winning streak has kind of gone under the radar to the point where the betting market isn't really giving them credit. They were still being rated a below average team. Meanwhile, the Saints are being rated, this kind of frisky, underdog, whatever. But they've also only won 1 game all season. So as much as we've kind of done the thing where we've done a bit of a maybe 180 is a stretch, maybe a 90-degree turn on Spencer Rattler. Would you give us a 90, just a shift?
We'll get to my guy Spence later, but yeah, I mean, right? he was looking a little shaky.
And it's it's a road game, outdoor Chicago against a team that the vibes are relatively high, and so I'm just looking at that game going wait a minute, -4. You might give Chicago a couple of points because of weather purposes for home field advantage, but it's a 2-point difference between the Bears and the Saints. That doesn't seem right. And so the point is that the market has then now corrected itself and moved its way up. And so the Bears are no longer a deal necessarily.
Yes.
Which brings us to the Ravens, because that's where this thing is more interesting, as you mentioned. And whether it's the Lamar thing or the defensive injuries, I mean, you saw it, man. When Lamar was out, it was pretty grim. We got to a point last week where, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, where as 7.5-point home underdogs, this Ravens team was being rated as a 30 out of 100. Current 30s out of 100, the Miami Dolphins. Right. Yeah. So it's the Ravens are being treated like the Miami Dolphins. And by the way, they bleeped it up to a point where they not just lost that game, but also didn't cover. And so Lamar comes back, and you ask, is this a Lamar line? I think that it is because of how bad they were rated when it wasn't Lamar. But not only is it a Lamar line, they have shot up to 67 out of 100. So like if that's a 37-point grading, right? Like if you were a kid taking some sort of class in high school and you went from being a 30 student, right? Just like the dumbest kid in class to all of a sudden like, oh my God, this kid's making a run at maybe a B or like, whatever. Like you'd be like, what happened to this kid? Like that's the situation with regards to the Ravens here. But my problem is like I watched the rest of the Ravens play football.
Yeah.
I don't think this team is particularly that great, and I don't know that it matters if Roquan Smith comes back for this game or Chidobe Awuzie comes back for this game, which were the only two guys that the defense did not have in that game against the Rams a couple of weeks ago. And so, like, yeah, like maybe this is a deal where it's like the pool table is out and the ping pong table and like all of these, like the video games are all out of the locker room for Baltimore because we are locking in. It is go time. And maybe all that stuff works. And maybe they get back to the point where before the season, when we went into that game in week 1 in Buffalo, where they were a house in Buffalo through 3 quarters, and they were rated in the 70s, like maybe that's the Ravens that we just all of a sudden get. You always kind of say it like, I'm going to need to see it first. And right now we're getting 6.5 points with a team that like is on the way up. And I don't know how much more room they have to necessarily go here, which is why I'm just kind of fine calling the Bears a league average team. I think there's like 12 to 15 league average teams. And anytime any one of them kind of gets their rating dipped below average, I want to bet on them. Anytime they get their rating kicked up a little bit to above average, teams that were rated in our rating system above 50%, but below sort of 58%, right? Like kind of that, like, yeah, they are. They're actually like a little bit above average. They went 1-6 against the spread last week. It essentially means to me that anytime a team who is just an average football team has a little success, the market goes, ooh, and then just kind of moves them up forward. And then guess what happens? Another game goes by. The Atlanta Falcons go to San Francisco and don't look all that great. The Pittsburgh Steelers go to Cincinnati and don't look all that great. And all of a sudden, those teams, you're like, oh yeah, they are just kind of an average team and they were being treated above average. So there's going to be a point here, especially if the Bears win this game, where the market is going to be too high on the Bears. I don't think that we're there yet. I think the market is too high and making too many assumptions about the Baltimore Ravens being all of a sudden back to a juggernaut. No more video games. We're all getting serious about this. It's like, I don't know, man. They used to be pretty good when they had video games and ping pong tables. So, like, I don't know if that's the thing that's going to change it. And so, like, I'm going to kind of do the thing where we dare them to play, like, their absolute best game of the season.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, we'll see if that happens. But against a Bears team, again, who has, like, things going. You mentioned the run game, and I think that's a big thing because, A, it keeps, the pressure off of Caleb Williams because I think once the pressure gets on Caleb Williams, really bad stuff happens. And so the thing with Ben Johnson, right, everybody talks about, like, the offense and, like, all the fun plays and stuff that he had with the Lions. But, like, really it came down to, did you have two dudes who could run the football in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs? Well, he's got two guys here in Kyle Monangai, who's kind of like this rookie out of Rutgers, who was a pretty explosive player for Rutgers. He's now kind of taking that David Montgomery role, while DeAndre Swift, former Lion, is taking a little, sort of the poor man's, if you will, Jahmyr Gibbs role. Yeah. And now that these guys are running the ball pretty well here, like we saw what the Lions did to the Ravens, 3-4 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So again, and like the Ravens were pretty healthy defensively in that situation, right? Ran right down the middle. And obviously the one thing that the Ravens didn't have was their big nose tackle. And like, he's out for the season. And so like, I think the Bears can do that same thing. Like just watch the Lions tape and do that. And you're probably going to stay within 6.5 points, regardless of what sort of happens here with the Ravens.
Yeah, this is a super interesting one, and I love the line about kind of like we need to see it from the Ravens. Like this could be the kitchen sink game, and I get that, but like totally. There's a lot that needs to be fixed underneath that sink, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's keep it going. We move on to Houston and the Texans, who are hosting the San Francisco 49ers. Houston, a slight favorite at 1.5. And I'll say this, Kyle Shanahan is my hero. Niners
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year.
Let's go.
Hey, listen, slow clap. Been talking about it from the start of the year, early on in the season, as on our season preview show for those regular subscribers and listeners, discuss just the Niners schedule and how that would look. Nobody could foresee all the injuries that occurred, but at the same time, when you have the institution of Kyle Shanahan and just the coaching staff surrounding him, Robert Saleh coming back, you're able to plug in the pieces and keep the train moving. The Niners, last week, I was wrong. I was on the Falcons last week. I really was. Niners got Kittle back. They just kept feeding Christian McCaffrey, just finding different ways to get him the ball. It was funny. I heard someone say that the Falcons need to run their offense with Bijan the exact same way that the Niners ran their offense against them last week, just feeding McCaffrey over and over and over again. Big shouts to my guy, Mac Jones, just continuing to do the simple job. Even without Fred Warner, they looked all right. You know who did not look all right? The Texans on Monday Night Football. CJ Stroud, I have no idea what's happened to that guy, but that offense just looks horrible. I feel bad for D'Amico and their defense, who keeps trying to make plays and keep things close. But we're talking about basically just winning the game here. And I just trust the institution of the Niners more. And so I'm going to be on the Niners here, +1.5.
Yeah, the Texans managed to fool a lot of people, right? With that big win against the Ravens, and then, as you and I talked about, right, kind of a fraudulently big win against the Titans, where if you just keep playing football for 60 minutes, eventually you're going to beat the Titans by 2 to 3 touchdowns,
but
unless you're Kyler Murray and the Cardinals.
Think about how these things are linked together, right? You're talking about the Ravens. How big of a deal does that Ravens win seem now, right?
Yeah,
so
no,
interesting.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the whole thing is just it's kind of built on a house of cards, because even that game that was, well out of reach, well after George Springer was hitting 3-run home runs to make the Seattle fans angry in the stands, that game should have been a 5-touchdown win for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Right? The heroic play. I forget who, forgetting who made
Anderson?
Well, no, I was going to say on the CJ Stroud fumble where the Seahawks are going in, and it's it gets punched out at the goal line, and even just that, right? That's 7 more points, and then a couple of defensive turnovers by the Texans, keeping them sort of hey, you get another chance, and the Texans goal line offense is an absolute train wreck. I referenced the Woody Marks thing, but it's just run the football, stop trying to pass the ball, and we've seen this for years now. Different offensive coordinators where you're just what is happening with the Texans? Is this an organizational philosophy to just make this as difficult as you possibly can on yourself? And I just looked, Nico Collins left that game with a concussion. He was getting locked down by Seattle's corners, as it was. But we're talking super short week, right? Late night on Monday, turning around to Sunday, and is he going to be available? And then what happens to the Texans offense when quite literally their best player, if he's not able to go, which again, concussion, you usually kind of assume a guy is going to miss a week, especially with that kind of short turnaround, travel, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see about that. The 49ers thing is interesting. And obviously you and I talked about the Kyle Shanahan stuff before the season, just going, and we didn't even know there was going to be injury on top of injury and Mac Jones' general involvement, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that fascinates me about the 49ers and just how the market is treating them with regards to individual awards. Remember 2 years ago when Lamar Jackson, I think it was, who won the MVP, and it was maybe Brock Purdy is, the MVP. But people are also saying maybe Christian McCaffrey is the MVP. And it was well, both of them can't be the MVP.
By definition,
they have each other, right? And so it's that's the same thing with the Lamar Derrick Henry thing last year. It's well, both guys are killing it. We can't really say that one dude is killing it. One dude is definitely killing it for the 49ers this year.
Yeah.
And it's a guy who was in the conversation just 2 years ago. And honestly, a couple of years sort of before that. And I know there's some sort of amendment in the NFL Constitution that says a running back cannot be the MVP. But what if he has 1,000 receiving yards and 1,000 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns? And it's funny because I'm deep in the weeds with Jonathan Taylor for Offensive Player of the Year. And I think Taylor ends up with better sort of stats, right? I think he ends up leading the league in rushing touchdowns, and gets Offensive Player of the Year because there's a couple of different dudes over involved in the Colts' success. Yeah. It's all Christian McCaffrey. So even if the numbers don't add up, how is he not at least in the conversation for MVP? And Shell, this would be one thing where you go like, but he's a running back, and like, how long is this going to last? And I get all of that stuff, especially with like, apparently like the 49ers don't have trainers or injury prevention, or they don't stretch.
Yeah,
I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what they're doing. But it'd be one thing if we're talking about like, Christian McCaffrey, but he's 20-1, 25-1 to win MVP. Christian McCaffrey's 150-1 to win MVP.
Wow. Okay.
Like, it's just no one has seemed to notice because we're busy talking about Baker Mayfield, who's doing all of the stuff, or at least up until this past week, doing all of the stuff to help his team win. But there's a reason that Baker Mayfield wasn't the favorite to win MVP this week, while it's still Patrick Mahomes, who, let's be honest, is probably still going to win it anyway. But, a lot of this stuff, because they're not going to hand out the MVP tomorrow. Speaking of, legislation and amendments, they are going to wait to the end of the season. And so we do have to see where this goes. But at 150-1, like $5, $10, like you wouldn't even notice that when they announce it to go to Mahomes or to Mayfield or to somebody else. But I just look at it and I go like, it's so funny that 2 years ago, like we thought of McCaffrey in that way, and yet he's doing more than he ever has before. Now, again, that thing might just train like right off the tracks, like who knows? And, again, everybody else has gotten hurt. So it's amazing that McCaffrey is still going. Like you mentioned, the Falcons guys, they have two guys, right? Algier and Bijan Robinson are like the one Christian McCaffrey. That's why they don't just do it all to Bijan, because it really is this like unsustainable thing. But honestly, like we've talked about this before in weeks past, as long as like Kyle Shanahan is involved, and as long as Christian McCaffrey's involved, like I'm going to find a hard time not like betting on the 49ers as long as they're not being rated like off of the charts.
Yeah.
And the reality is they're still not being rated off of the charts. They are still being rated below the range that they had coming into the season. And that's why I'm going to have to agree with you here, because again, I think this Texans team that is now starting to sort of see a hit to their range, I think that's kind of just more appropriate, right? Again, I think they kind of got away with one from a scheduling perspective. I mean, imagine if the Texans had to go to Baltimore in week 1 or go to Baltimore in week 15. Presumably everybody's, Lamar's good to go and by week 15, but like, the point is, like, you catch a team at the right time, your season changes and your rating stays a certain way. And like, I am not seeing that with the Texans, who again, like we're flattered to lose that game by 2 touchdowns last week. Flattered. They're like, oh, sure, yeah, we'll only lose by like whatever it was. Like, it's like, no, you guys should have lost by like 30 in that game.
CJ Stroud might lead the league in like just cutaways to him just shaking his head. Like he's just always
confused and like, and everybody else doesn't know what's going on either. So man, I don't know.
It's pretty funny. But yes, Niners are the pick there. Keep the train moving, Mac Jones. Let's go. Speaking of let's go, we'll go to Atlanta, where the Niners just beat, I guess the Niners just beat the Falcons, not in Atlanta, but you get the point of what I was trying to say in the segue. We got it. Falcons hosting the Miami Dolphins. Falcons 7-point favorites at home. And even as I look at the screen and it says, Sheldon says ATL -7, I'm still surprised myself that I made that pick.
Did I?
But as we sit here, Tua pulled after his 3rd interception. And it's one thing to say someone has 3 interceptions, but when you actually see said interceptions,
I know.
Oof, it's a tough go. Money Mike is, what can we say about Money Mike? I want to take the points. I really do want to take the points here. I get it. It's a touchdown. That's a lot of points. But between the way the Dolphins looked last week and just have overall vibes around the Dolphins and the fact that the Falcons might just be the weirdest team possible, where they're just flip-flopping weeks. Like we look awesome against the Bills. Then we go to San Fran. We can't do anything. Apparently we have no chance against San Fran. I don't know. The offense just looked terrible. And then now you're going to come home and you're going to face a Dolphins defense that is not nearly as good as even San Fran's banged up defense. It just seems like the perfect week for a bounce back, perfect week to be like, oh, maybe Penix is not that bad after just watching him be that bad last week. But you know what I'm saying here? Like it's just a flip-flop all over the place. Miami just seems prime for the bounce back. Again, 7 points is a lot, but there's a lot of 7-point spreads this week.
Yeah, there's
a lot of big spreads this week, and someone's going to get got. right? Because that's just how it works. But I don't know if that's going to be led by Money Mike and Tua.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
I know. I imagine they just turn the lights up super bright in Atlanta because, listen, Money Mike's got the shades on. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You can have the dankest Cleveland afternoon and Money Mike is going to have the shades on. And it's so infuriating. And it's just like, yet somehow, like, I literally... I forget what I was listening to something, right? And they're talking about how, like, yeah, Mike McDaniel like has to get fired. And this was like Tuesday afternoon. It's literally just yesterday. And I'm like looking around, going like checking my phone. I'm like, wait, he didn't get fired?
I did the same thing this morning.
I was like, oh, like I just kind of assumed it was a thing, right? It's like some of these college coaches that are getting fired or not getting fired.
I've been watching the Jays a lot. Maybe I missed the headline.
Yeah, it's like, wait, Luke Fickell hasn't been fired yet? Like Mike Norvell hasn't been fired? Like, what's his buyout? And it's the same thing with Mike McDaniel. Like, oh man, he's not fired yet. Huh. Crazy thing. Okay, so let's get into this game. So yeah, listen, man, you can get rid of Matt Ryan. You can move Kirk Cousins to the bench.
Yeah.
But like you just seemingly can't take the Falcons out of the Falcons, right? Like, and what was always the deal with them? It was like, yeah, they're going to win some games because like Ryan's going to pull off some stuff and Cousins is going to pull off some stuff. But like, do I ever want to be laying 7 points with the Atlanta Falcons? Like, again, just, it doesn't matter who. It's just like, I don't want to do that. And so I go like, well, why is this spread? Like, why are you the way you are? Right? Like The Office. Like, why are, Michael Scott, why are you the way you are this point spread? And I just look at it and I go, well, we saw the Falcons beat the Bills. They go on the road. You mentioned that you were on the Falcons, last week, but like, yeah, so was like a lot of people as that line went from 49ers -2 to Falcons -1 by the time that kicked off, right? Like we don't see that. We actually saw it a handful of times, 2 or 3 times last week, but like you don't see that sort of that close to kickoff without there being some sort of significant injury that kind of gets announced in the couple of days leading up to it. Like we knew who all the injuries were going to be for that game. And so like that was, and obviously that was the market reacting to liking the Falcons in that game. And now that they're -7 this week, next week's line, like, should we play the look ahead game, Shell? I know you love it when I make you guess these lines. But next week, the Falcons are going to New England. What do you have the point spread for Falcons Patriots next week?
I'd go Patriots -1.5.
Wow. Okay. I thought you were going to go higher. That's interesting.
I thought about it.
It's actually Patriots -2.5.
Ooh,
and this is a Patriots team that just won and covered 3 straight road games, right? Like the vibes are super high in New England right now. Drake May is like the 3rd or 4th favorite for the MVP, and it's like I think everybody needs to calm down a bit there. But my point was going to be that like for all the vibes being maximum with the Patriots, like are we rating the Falcons right there with the Patriots right now? Given like that what we've seen from the Falcons is so much more up and down, and like that's what that line essentially indicates, that like the Patriots are maybe up 1 point better than the Falcons. And so the point is that when you take that rating and having the Falcons up there with the Patriots, and like I said, their 3rd or 4th choice for the MVP at quarterback, you start to go like, that's kind of a high rating for the Falcons because like again, they beat the Bills that last week, but like first play of the game, Bijan fumbles that football, and we could have had Bills like short field, but they get called for offside, like somebody lined up offside or whatever. And so like that was the first play of the game, and who knows what happens. The point is like sometimes this stuff comes down to the last play, and sometimes it can kind of come down to the first play. And so who knows how the game necessarily changes. But the point is that like the drastic move towards the Falcons and liking the Falcons in that zone where they're a little bit above average didn't work all that well for them last week. And so the Dolphins, like it looks grim, and we make fun of your boy Money Mike, and Aviator stock is just absolutely plummeted. And so the point is like the Dolphins were actually in the game the week before against the Chargers.
Yeah.
And so like we keep making fun of the Dolphins, and then, you know, obviously like it's the irony, it's sort of just weirdly perfect, right? Like the Dolphins go to Cleveland on a grim bad weather game. And it's, yeah, of course the Miami team
for them to look terrible.
It's kind of perfect for them, and Tua to look terrible. And listen, I was deep in. I was like a 10-leg same game parlay on like cold weather stuff happening. And the one leg that lost was Devon Achane couldn't get 5 receptions. And so the Dolphins are out here in that weather, not just tossing the ball, easy throws to Achane. And you're just like, how are you this stupid that you don't just do this? And instead it's Tua just hucking the ball down the field into the wind, a guy who is notoriously not have a great arm strength.
Yeah.
And so you just like, that's the part that sort of really bothers me, of course, right? Like just the decision making as a whole. But again, it's not like they're not the Titans. They don't just never cover. Yeah, they don't just never compete. It was just this very specific scenario. So, you know, again, like we keep saying, like, oh, they're this dead team walking. But again, just 2 weeks ago, they're a field goal, you know, essentially one play, wrapping up Justin Herbert away from potentially beating the Chargers. And so I look at it and I go, man, like this is a lot of, this is a big rating for the Falcons. This is obviously nobody liking the Dolphins, right? Like this is a drop in the Dolphins. And, you know, I go like, we're back indoors. Like this seems like a better scenario for the Dolphins offense. Seems like a better scenario for the Dolphins defense. And, you know, again, we're getting 7 points. We're asking the Falcons to win a game here by more than 7 points, which, like, again, for the last 20 years hasn't really been a good idea, right? And again, they may win easily, they may cover, but it's just like, you know, again, I don't want to paint this Falcons team with the brush of Falcons teams of past. But sorry, man, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I don't really want to be laying it with the Falcons here. So it's a begrudging, like, Dolphins are probably the valuable side.
Still nothing? No?
I still can hear it. I knew you were doing it that time. In the control room. Like, let's plug some stuff in. Let's, you know.
Right? I don't know what's happening here.
Wires.
I don't know what's happening.
Connect the red wire to the red, you know.
Right?
Insert
Something's got to be going on here. I don't know what's going on.
Control room.
I mean, I hope the people can hear the gong. I'm sure people in the mentions will be letting me know, like, hey, you got to fix your plugs or something.
Sound of silence, man. The change, the winds of change is the sound of silence. I don't know.
Something's going on. I mean, especially because that's our second switcheroo of the week. And it's like, you know, at the same time, got to keep track of, you know, what the switches are and also where the switches are and also can the sound effects work.
11-4 last week, man. Like we are going. We're back above 500. So proud of you.
Trying to keep the good times going, right? That's what we try to do here. Speaking of keeping the good times going, we switched to the New England Patriots. Also trying to keep said good times going. Drake May looking like a combination of Tom Brady, Joe Montana, and John Elway all in one. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But the point I'm trying to make is my guy had like 2 incompletions last week. Like just an insane performance. He's been on a roll here. I know we were talking about MVPs earlier, and, you know, if he keeps this up, we know how the news machine, especially that Boston news machine, the industry plants that Boston seems to have all over major news media places all over the United States of America. Yeah, it could be a thing. I mean, the Browns dominated the Dolphins, but do you actually get credit for that? As we just discussed, you know, it was just a bad spot, or they were just better prepared to play in the game and situation that they were in, meaning run the ball, and run the ball some more. What was it? Oh, my old coach, Mr. Lilico, straight up the gut.
Oh, man, we haven't talked about Mr. Lilico in
years.
Oh, he was a staple on the show.
Straight up the gut, nothing fancy about it. Judkins just doing work. You told us about Judkins early, by the way.
Yeah.
Early, you were on that island. I like that. 3 touchdowns last week, doing work, but it was against the Dolphins. So how much am I taking into this? I'm not really sure. But the reason I'm on the Patriots and I'm going to lay the 7 points here, even though it's a lot and I don't really like it, is because I'm wondering if the Browns get down early, can they actually like pass the ball and like come back enough for said backdoor cover, because that's always what you're worried about, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like, if the Pats are up, we know they can run the ball. We know that Browns can run the ball, pardon me, but you're going to be passing the ball more, and that's not really what you want to be doing,
Right.
Mr. Gabriel. I don't know. I'm laying the points here with the Patriots.
Yeah, I just mentioned, right, the idea that the teams that had been sort of gotten a rating boost, the sort of teams that we consider league average, getting a boost to being above average, and they were like 1-6 last week. Guess who the one was? The New England Patriots going to the Titans and covering that game. But it's like the rules do not apply to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah,
right?
They're in their own world.
That's right. It's like non-Titans edition. Everybody who had gotten that rating boost
Hold
last
on. Again,
week lost.
The line of the season. Let's keep it a buck. We asked.
Yeah, and still very the new coach bump. Like it lasted 25 minutes, like 26 minutes. So yeah, I just, again, we've talked about it before, like NBA teams or NHL teams, right? When they go on a long road trip and they come back in that first home game, like there's just kind of something missing. You'd think it's like, oh, well, they did so well on the road that they're going to just ride that into home. And it's like, no, actually they kind of exhale a little bit, right? They're doing laundry, they're grabbing groceries, all that kind of stuff. And so like, I am a little bit worried, obviously, from that perspective where it's like, yeah, all right, well, we're already rating the Patriots really high. Just mentioned the Drake May thing. You mentioned the Boston, whatever you want to call that, right? The Stonecutters, the Boston Stonecutters, meetings that are happening in the media on a regular basis. And so I just kind of go like, all right, and now we're going to ask this team to win by 2 scores against a Browns team that like kind of just wants to grime it up with you, right? Where it's going to be Quinshon Judkins 25 times. I think he's like a top 5 running back in the league, at least from just like a running perspective. He certainly looked that way last season with Ohio State, or in his entire career with Ohio State. So, he flies under the radar because it's a contract issue before the season starts, and he wasn't like ready to, raring to go in that like week 1 or week 2, but like now like it's cooking pretty good for him in that run game. I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper into like what my expectations are for the Browns offense against this Patriots team. But again, like you go and you win and you exceed the expectations, and eventually you do have to get credit for that, right? Like you're going on the road, you're winning outright against Buffalo. You cover the number against the Saints, and you cover the number relatively easily against the Titans. But again, like that's built into the line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the market
has ask.
Yeah, the market has paid attention to that. And so, even just the look ahead line was 6.5 last week. And now we're looking at 7 here. And again, the requirement is maybe a little bit too much for me. It's just a matter of like, all right, are you willing to like pull the trigger on the Browns? And I'm going to need to kind of go in over the next couple of days and like dig up some reasons why I think that, Dylan Gabriel can have success, or, the run game is going to be able to have success, or the defense is going to be able to get to Drake May and maybe jam him up a little bit. I think weather is a factor in all of that, right? Because it was a pretty nice night in Buffalo 3 weeks ago. Pretty nice to be under the roof in New Orleans. And then, of course, Nashville, delightful weather last week. And so, like, who knows, man? Just because the Patriots home games are in cold weather location doesn't mean they are a cold weather team. Doesn't mean Drake May is a cold weather quarterback, right? Kid from North Carolina. So, like if it's really dicey weather-wise, guess who that favors? Well, we just saw it last week. Cleveland. So, again, we're asking a ton here of the Patriots to cover -7. Again, a team that is not flying under the radar by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, lots going on there. I'm riding the wave. I'm gonna continue to ride the wave for one more week, and what a wave this is, right? Them covering 7 points. So we shall see for sure. Another game I'm looking forward to seeing on Sunday would be the Philadelphia Eagles at home hosting the Giants. Eagles favored by 7 points here, and I mean, can't get too far into this discussion without mentioning just the Giants giving up an 18-point lead with 6 minutes left is just insane work. Like absolutely insane work, between bad interceptions from Dart, missed field goals, Daboll just doing the most. Although I am enjoying watching Brian Daboll just lose it on the sidelines every week for a very different reasons, whether he's yelling at doctors or he's mad at his kicker or whoever, It's hilarious to watch to me. But flip side, Eagles won. Hurts looked all right. right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this a revenge game as the Eagles were embarrassed by the Giants? What was that 2 weeks ago? Everything's a blur during this Blue Jays run.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 weeks ago on Thursday night. They were embarrassed by the Giants. This is a tough one, but I mean, I got to start with the Giants here and take the points just because I feel as if the Giants divisional matchup, I'm always going to lean towards taking the points here when it's more than a field goal between these teams. And it's not like the Eagles have done everything to like lose the stench that's been surrounding them for most of this season.
No. You know,
7 is a lot. That's nice.
Yeah. You know who Brian Dable reminds me of? This might be a deep pull for some. The hockey coach in Letterkenny. You ever watched Letterkenny show?
Yes, I actually have. Yes.
Right? Yeah, of course.
But now I'm confusing Letterkenny and Shorzy.
Yeah, no, not the coach in Shorzy.
I know, but that's what I thought first.
Different guy.
Because I'm like, no, that's definitely not.
He's the Letterkenny coach, right? Who's just like constantly yelling about stuff. And so, yeah, if you have, like, for the love of God, people, even if you're not Canadian, if you haven't watched Letterkenny, like I beg of you, and then subsequently Shorzy, we were talking about a football game. Oh, let's bust out the textbooks. Do I have any textbooks? No, I'm not. I'm 40. I don't have any textbooks. Haven't for 20 years. Textbook, like, line evaluation situation.
Yep, I like
2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Eagles at Giants. The point spread was.
I don't remember.
Eagles -7.
Oh, okay.
That game and one game later, the point spread in this game is in Philadelphia.
Correct.
Eagles -7. Like, textbook, how much value are you putting into games, right? Obviously, one of them being a matchup against one another, because obviously we are getting, when you throw in 1.5 points for either side, a 3-point flip for home field advantage, and the number being the same. Yeah. So again, like, all right, you can tell me that if the Eagles were playing the Giants again this week, that line would be 4. I would go, okay. Yeah. I guess. But if we're doing it off of the Eagles last week, they won the game and covered, so that's not off of the game last week. If you're doing it off of the Giants last week, yes, they covered the point spread. But how great are you necessarily feeling about the Giants, given what sort of transpired there? Yeah. And then, obviously, what this is really built on is the game from Thursday night 2 weeks ago. And again, we can do the thing, and I did the thing last week where it's like, I don't believe in this Eagles team. Like, I don't think much of this Eagle, That was embarrassing on that Thursday night. Yeah. And like, this is, you want to talk about revenge spots, right? And people like hook up narratives about like Mike Vrabel returning to the Tennessee as if like everybody doesn't just hammer the Titans, and like how much did that really, you know what I mean? Like, the Patriots won that game because the Patriots are better than the Titans because everybody's better than the Titans. Yeah. Like, you can do all that. It's like one guy is getting sort of revenge. The entire team was an abomination on that Thursday night against the Giants, and now they get that team back in their crib, so to speak. But there's another element to all of this, and that's quite literally the personnel on the field. They did not have Landon Dickerson in the middle of that offensive line. He, based on sort of what I'm looking at here, does not have any injury designation. They lost Quinyon Mitchell in the middle of that game, and then all of a sudden we were deep in the Kaylee Ringo life for Thursday, and nobody wants to be in the Kaylee Ringo life. And doesn't look like Quinyon Mitchell, who again played last week, doesn't seem like he has an injury designation. Adoree Jackson has an injury designation, so maybe we are back in the Kaylee Ringo life. But honestly, if the difference between, I don't know if there's that much of a difference between those two. Like, we need Quinyon Mitchell on the field if you're going to be backing the Eagles. And then, arguably most importantly of all, they didn't have Jalen Carter last week either, or 2 weeks ago either, right? So we're talking about 3 players that like aren't going to affect the point spread. And obviously one of those guys went out in the game, so we didn't even get a chance to see what Quinyon Mitchell's value was to the point spread. But, all of those guys are healthy, and you've got a more locked in team that is, frankly not, in Philadelphia is not going to be treated well if they put in the same effort against the rival Giants this week. And so this one is, I think there's value on the Eagles here, right? The Eagles rating has not shot back up, right? We have to be worried and vigilant of when the Eagles rating shoots back up into the mid 60s, the high 60s, even the low 70s, which is where it has been during the part of the season where they've disappointed. The rating for the Eagles is still at the bottom end of their range at 60 here. The bottom of the range means we should be betting on that team. And so then you go, all right, well, what's the story with the Giants? Well, the Giants obviously got mega booted down into the dregs of society there during the Russell Wilson escapade, but they have moved back up. They're not necessarily league average at this point, so let's not get crazy here. But they're right in the middle part of their range here. And so again, whether you want to talk about ratings and ranges, or you literally just want to open up the textbook and look at the value proposition from this game to 2 weeks ago, the value here is on the Eagles. And so again, whether you can stomach that and go all right, they got to win by 2 possessions here, I think they can do that. They're fully aware of Jackson Dart being able to run the football, which was the thing that somehow kind of seemed to surprise them in that game on Thursday. And then just taking Cam Scatterbo to the face over and over and over again. But beyond that, the Giants, it's all just there's a little smoke and mirrors going on there. And I think the Eagles obviously have sort of seen behind the curtain already with the Giants, and they're going to be ready to go for this game on Sunday. So yeah, it seems like a lot because you're the Giants just won by 17 points last time they played. It's I think you're going to get a different look out of the Eagles. And frankly, you might get a bit of a different look out of the Giants as well on sort of the negative side of things.
This is an interesting one for me because, I love nothing more than a good old get back. So the pick has been changed. The gong has been sounded. The Eagles -7. And the biggest reason here is just sometimes what I do and why I appreciate this pod so much is I get caught up in, what's recency bias as opposed to, no, the Eagles are just a way better team than the Giants. And if both of them came in to said game in Philadelphia, Eagles roll. Yeah, the Giants had their fun, cool story. They're posing and flexing on camera and chugging beers on the set of Amazon Prime and all that, and cool. Yeah. And then you go out and give up, what was that last week? How many points did they give up in the fourth quarter?
That's
just
right.
Insanity. 33 points in the fourth quarter. That's not a real operation that you're running.
No,
it's just not. You can't give up 33 points in a fourth quarter and call yourself a real operation. That is difficult to do. Very difficult to do. So yes, pick has been changed. Cool. Let's roll. Eagles. We're on it. And we will move on to another NFC East team and the aforementioned Broncos. I don't know how these games sort of all plotted out with each other here. I didn't
Production's unbelievable today.
Yeah, shouts to the producer who put these things in order. Great job by whoever did that.
Control room's a bit of a mess, but the producer's absolutely lighting it up. So
right,
could be a fight in the control room later.
Balance, key to life. The aforementioned Broncos at home, favored by 3.5 points, hosting said Dallas Cowboys. I will be gobbling the points with the Dallas Cowboys. And maybe this is, I'm countering what I just said. This is the recency bias of watching the Dallas Cowboys offense rolling, especially CD Lamb back in action. And they, just putting up points. Mind you, is on the Commandos, and they have their own issues for sure.
Uh-huh.
The Broncos, though, as just mentioned, erasing an 18-point deficit in 6 minutes is kind of crazy. But the thing, my biggest takeaway is I still don't know what to make of Bo Nix. He can look like he has no idea what's going on. He can look like he's Spencer Rattler for 3 quarters. And then all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, my guy's just out here balling, making all the plays. It's how, were you saving the plays for the fourth quarter? What is going on here? I don't understand. So that's what makes me confused here. But also, if this is a shootout, and both defenses are just I shouldn't say both defenses because we know the Cowboys defense is always going to be in a shootout.
Right.
But I'm going to roll with Dak and company here. Give me the 3.5 points. And I'm hoping that, somehow Bo Nix will keep the game close himself for the first bit.
Yeah.
Giving Dak and company a chance here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I vow to get every Dallas Cowboys game wrong from here on in, because I've pretty much done it throughout this entire season. Because I don't know, when does the Dallas defense become problematic, right? Is it your crazy uncle who gets a couple of drinks in him, at Thanksgiving, and it's just like, oh God, here we go, right? Or is it business uncle? It's just like, you catch him, at lunch on a Tuesday, and you're like, oh, he's really buttoned up. And it's like, I don't know which one it is on a given week, because I kind of thought maybe the Panthers weren't going to be able to take advantage of the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm not going to jump in front of you here. I'm not going to promise anybody I'm going to take the Cowboys either. I got to do a little more digging on this game. The one thing that I am sort of thinking about, we worry all the time about what teams are doing when they travel to London. We just saw the Rams, right? Try getting wild by showing up less than 24 hours before their game. And it's like, yeah, looks like it worked, but it's like, yeah, it's still just one sample size. Meanwhile, the Jags go every year, and they seem to not be able to sort of figure it out, which might just be the jaggiest thing you could possibly say about the Jags.
Yeah.
And so as much as we talk about all that, right? We are kind of forgetting to do the thing where it's well, what happens now that teams are opting out of having the bye after London? What are they doing after they come back? We have the obvious example of the Browns, right? Where they come back and it's the Steelers are off of their bye. They're going to be double the speed of the Browns, which by the way is also another sort of case for the Browns this week, where you go are we still kind of rattled by the Browns' performance, coming back from London, and then all of a sudden they play a lot better a week after. Is that going to be the same thing for the Broncos, who passed on the idea of the bye week and then maybe kind of sluggished their way through the first three quarters against the Giants before picking up the pace? And so if that's the case, then I'm going to like the Broncos a week later. I might also, we'll get to it in a second here, theoretically you could apply that logic to the Jets.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. And so, again, maybe that's the sort of hidden thing where it's not just fading the team the week after they come back from London or Germany or Madagascar or wherever they're going to play next. It's maybe, all right, if you don't look very good that week, then maybe it's the next week that there's value on backing you. And so that would be the argument for me for the Broncos. Now, again, it's how good is the Cowboys offense in, the year 2025, in our modern era? Good offenses tend to beat good defenses. And it used, we grew up back in our day, that was never the case, right? You could play defense, and we used to have the utmost respect for a lot of these defense who would shut down the Peyton Mannings of the world. Right. And it's just the defenses don't really do that. We have good defenses. They dominate the crappy offenses in the league. They dominate some of the average offenses. By the way, right? Jackson Dart, 5 carries for 11 yards. Maybe, the Broncos finally, were a team that showed, hey, this kid doesn't have to be running around on us all the time. Maybe the Eagles will pay attention to that. Again, maybe the Broncos defense is really good. I don't really know sort of what happened to allow those touchdowns the way that it did. Obviously, the end there with a bit of a sketchy pass interference. It was the wonky bounce that,
there's a lot going on.
A lot going on. Daniel Bellinger running free through the secondary like a Swiss boy through a meadow, right? There's a lot of weird stuff that, that the Giants accrued their points off of. And so I just kind of think it's a pretty good matchup. It's obviously a super interesting matchup from just a watching perspective. I always get sort of my dander up about the 3.5, right? It's always come on in, the water's warm, plus 3.5. It's the Cowboys offense, guys. And it's yeah, but it's still the Cowboys defense that let the Panthers run them all over the field, right? And it's let's not lose our heads here with regards to the Cowboys. They are back to being rated sort of that slightly above average team. That can, as we talked about, that can be a little bit dangerous. They're actually they're up into the 54 region. If I tell, if my theory is that's kind of the sweet spot for fading you, this might be time to fade the Cowboys here. But again, I'm haven't got a Cowboys game right, I don't think, all season, not since week 1. Got week 1 correct, and I think after that, it's been just a tough scene across the board.
This is a tough one here, and I'm willing to be wrong on the Cowboys here, because much like you, I feel like I was wrong on the Cowboys a lot, and then a couple weeks, I feel like I've had a couple weeks of the Cowboys just kind of figuring them out a little bit more, if that makes sense.
If you can catch the rhythm, right? You can catch the rhythm, and it's not just the Cowboys, right? It's a lot of these teams, because you and I talk about this all the time, or not all the time necessarily, but towards the end of the season, where like all these teams are going to end up 8-8 against the spread, or like 8-9 against the spread, 9-8 against the spread. And sometimes, and again, I've never gone back and done it or whatever, but sometimes I just go like, did you cover last week? And if the answer is yes, I'm probably going to bet against you. And if the answer is no, then I'm probably going to bet on you. And like, given the fact that all these teams end up 8-8 against the spread by the end of the season, like it's very rarely, they lost 5 games in a row against the spread. Yeah. Or they won 5 games against, because the market is so sophisticated now that it adapts really quickly, and in some cases too quickly. But it's easier to adapt too quickly because everybody else, all the lemmings are just going to fall off the cliff, because like they're just going to pay bad prices on some of these potential bets. And I don't know that that's necessarily what's happening here, but Cowboys are getting rated like put it this way, the Cowboys are rated higher than they have been all season long.
Yeah, and that's not
usually a bad sign. Yeah, that's usually a bad sign.
I'm switching the pick. It's happening. It's happening.
Whoa!
It's happening. That was one where I started writing it in and then stopped. I'm like, no, I'm gonna stick with it. And I deleted it. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna stop. No, I'm gonna switch. And then you know what's gonna happen? The thing is, right? It's one of those we're going to be watching the Cowboys game, and you'll be like, I knew Dak in Denver, like that's a tough spot for
a couple turnies.
Yeah.
A couple Dak turnovers, right? That we've been missing.
You know what I mean?
By the way, like Sean Payton, like if you are anything like the people are trying to tell us for the last 20 years, you can scheme up some big plays against this Cowboys defense.
Yeah. For the people at home, had to play the gong for the people at home, hoping that they can hear that, as I can hear it in my headphones, so I'm hoping. Who knows? We'll have to find out. We'll have to let the people online let us know. Can they hear the gong or not?
Yeah.
Right? That's going to be the theme of this week's
survey. Gong or no gong.
Says
it would be either 100% or 0%. So I don't know if it's like, I don't know if it's a great survey. So you got to hear it or you don't.
Not the best poll going on.
Yeah, it's like 0. Everybody else 100.
Well, I'd be the 1%. So we keep it going, though. We got the Panthers hosting said Buffalo Bills. 7-point road favorites. Now, the Panthers, they won again. Above 500 for the first time since 2019. Mm-hmm. Is that real life? Winners of 3 in a row. 4 of their last 5. On the bad side, Bryce Young left last week's game with an injury. Says that he's doubtful. Could be hearing Andy Dalton's music.
Mm-hmm. Red
Not
rifle.
Sure how I really feel about that. But is this a weight class? Obviously, you could think that because Buffalo's coming off a bye. But the Buffalo Bills I saw before the bye, and I know they were banged up. I know they might be getting some guys back. That's still not a Buffalo team that I'm laying 7 points with on the road. It's just not a place I want to be, especially not against a team that, regardless of them being the Panthers, they're still playing better. They're still playing like a functional operation. And 7 points as road favorites, that might be too much for me here. Give me the Panthers. I will take the +7.
If you do a little shopping, my man, you can get +7.5, -115. That is where I would go with it. I look at it this way, right? Like the Panthers are going to try to do one thing. And it's just run. We're just going to run this damn football, right? Rico Dowdle, he doesn't even look the same as the guy from the Cow. And I mean, like physically, did he put 20 pounds on? Like, I don't, we might get ourselves like a notification here that like somebody kind of, got hit with some sort of testing, or I don't want to make that an accusation, but like the dude looks powerful out there. And like now that they have Chuba Hubbard back, it doesn't have to be 25, 30 carries for Dowdle. And so you keep him healthy, fresh legs on sort of both sides. And listen, you can talk about like whether they should have given Hubbard contract extension the way that they did last year. When that happened, I was like, well, that seems like a horrifying decision. And honestly, with Dowdle being the better player, shows like, yeah, it was a really bad decision. But if you've got the two guys, you might as well use the two guys. Yeah. And what was tricky about last week's game against the Jets was, one, just the concept of our brains wrapping around the idea that the Panthers are road favorites, and that's like something that we should bet on, but also that the Jets' run defense, the Dallas game notwithstanding, still don't understand what the bleep went on there, was that like the Jets' run defense from an EPA per play perspective is like actually very good. And so like that was kind of scary. Now, again, the Jets' offense is a different situation. So like the Panthers end up kind of getting away with the prototypical road game in that instance. So again, the point being here is like, can the Bills do anything to stop the Panthers? Which is, again, it's just kind of a wild sentence to sort of say here. Well, like, we'll see what the deal is. You mentioned injuries, right? Daquan Jones, big, 320-pound defensive tackle. Is he going to be able to play in this game? You got questionable tags still for Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard. And the rating for the Bills has ticked back up. We had seen it drop even going into that Falcons game. And our general vibe on that game was like, I don't know if it's dropped far enough. And so, like, yeah, you're going to give them some credit for the bye week. You're going to give them credit for that injuries. But, like, they are back up to the sixth ranked team in the league. They are still rated higher than the Colts. They are right there with the Ravens. And we already said, like, I'm not really sure I'm ready to put the Ravens where they are. Yeah. The Rams are way up there. The Lions, the Packers, and, of course, the Chiefs leading the way by quite a bit. So, I'm with you, man. I go like, if the Panthers can do the thing that most other teams have been able to do, which is run the football against the Bills, like, hit the cliche button, right? It's like Josh Allen keeping him off the field and like this, that, or whatever. So, a little bit uncomfortable, certainly, against a team coming off a bye week here who goes into the bye week losing 2 straight games. I think you're going to get the best effort out of the Bills. I think the market is suggesting that you're going to get the best effort out of the Bills. But the Panthers are still, we're still pretty slow as a betting market to sort of buy into the Panthers, even though they were 1.5 point favorites on the road last week and won and covered. So, I think you're probably on the right thing here. I guess, 7.5 is definitely the play here. Minus 115 available at some prominent shops. So give me the Panthers in this one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure with the Panthers. Anytime you're rolling with the Panthers for that many games in a row, it's like it's a tough, interesting place to be.
And if the rating had sort of shot to the point where they're on the sort of edge of their range, we'd be like, beep, back it up, right? Yeah, but it hasn't. It's still. They're 7.5 point underdogs at home. We're still not buying. And honestly, I forgot to mention obviously the Bryce Young, Andy Dalton thing. Like, if there's anything Andy Dalton can do, it's get them in the correct run play on a play-to-play basis.
That point,
not that Bryce Young can, right?
Huge point, though.
Yeah, veteran. And again, you can make the case Jacoby Brissett style might be the better quarterback on a one-game basis, right? We're investing in all these quarterbacks for the long term. Sometimes these older guys are the better ones in the short term.
Yeah, definitely an interesting spot there in that game. And you're talking about these veteran QBs. That leads us to our next game. And veteran QB, Joe Flacco and the Cincinnati Bengals, 6.5 point favorites at home, hosting the aforementioned Jets. And the interesting part here about this game is I went back and forth. I switched this pick maybe 3 or 4 times before recording this pod. And then again, during this pod, listen, the Jets are bad. The Jets are really bad, whether it's Fields, whether it's Tyrod Taylor. Aaron Glenn's offense just looks terrible. Aaron Glenn's defense just looks terrible. They're 0-7. They can't move the ball. They can't do anything. Trying not to do the recency bias thing because we were all over the Bengals last week and Joe Flacco's ability to just say, hey, I'm going to throw the ball to Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
The top, 2 best receiver in the league. I'm just going to find a way to get him the ball. And then he goes on the desk after the game and admits that he didn't even know the play calls or the
No.
plays at certain points. He's just saying stuff in the huddle and looking for Chase to find the ball.
Yeah.
I'm hoping maybe another week might help him learn said plays a little more. Maybe they'll be able to do a little more, but it's also just Joe Flacco. And that's what makes this tough. And I'm laying 6 points with the Bengals. But if there's a team to do that against, it's the Jets. This is why I'm going back and forth so much. But
Yeah.
I'm going to be on the Bengals, going to be on Jamar Chase and Joe Flacco. Let's go.
Bad setup. Bad setup.
I get it.
Bad setup for this game. This will be the last game before Halloween, not counting the Thursday night game, which the Bengals will not be part of. This feels like Joe Flacco as like he's gone out as a witch for Halloween, and he's doing the long finger, like, come on in, Sheldon, come on in. And it's just like, oh, which, yeah, sure. No, man, -6.5 for a Joe Flacco team. Right. Like that's what I look at. I go like, we saw one Joe Flacco, quality performance against a defense that's wildly overrated in a desperation situation. And we now go from getting them as +5.5, +6 home underdogs to laying 6.5 points. And the answer, of course, to all of that is, well, the Jets are god-awful. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm aware of that. But again, if we're using sort of that premise, like we're kind of looking around about the whole, all right, if you don't do the bye week after London, you play bad, we shouldn't be surprised. And then when the market knocks you down to the point where if the Tennessee Titans didn't exist, you would be the worst team in the NFL. Then we have to sort of go, all right, is it time to like hold our nose here and back the Jets on the road? And you go, okay, well, I don't want to back at the Jets. And you go, okay, why, Shell? Why don't you want to back the Jets? You're like, because I can't watch Justin Fields throw another football. And you know what? Neither can Aaron Glenn, because we're getting professional quarterback a la Joe Flacco, a la Jacoby Brissett. We're getting professional quarterback Tyrod Taylor in for a game where he gets all of the reps leading up to the game. And we have seen that one other time this season. That time, a road game against the Buccaneers, where, listen, did things get super weird late in that game for teams to cover and this, that, or whatever? Yeah, they did, but at least the Jets were much more competitive. I don't want to deal with the Jets at home because the vibes are at an all-time low, and which is crazy to say for the Jets. How could they be lower than, I don't know, any other year, basically?
Any other year for Jets football.
Yeah. Get them on the road. Get them getting points. Get them facing Joe Flacco. Let's get Sauce Gardner out there to see what he can do against Jamar Chase. Let's get Garrett Wilson back into the lineup, because this is going to be one of these deals. Like if you were Justin Fields and you were maybe thinking a little more highly of yourself than you probably should, you'd be sitting there going like, wait a second, I get benched and Garrett Wilson comes back against this garbage Bengals defense? Yeah. How is that fair? Meanwhile, like Tyrod's out there doing stuff and you're just like, what? No, and it's like, well, actually, Justin, you've had plenty of opportunity to throw the ball to Garrett Wilson, and like you're the one who got him injured in the first place because you can't put the ball in the right place at the right time, and like a veteran quarterback can do that. And so I'm looking at Tyrod Taylor going, put the ball in Breece Hall's hands, put the ball in Garrett Wilson's hands, put the ball in Mason Taylor's hands. My God, like just put it in somebody's hands that isn't yours because you think that you can get out of every possible escape artist type situation, which is the worst thing that happened to Justin Fields probably, is that he had that crazy touchdown run against the Dolphins because he's like, I am all the way back. You can't stop me. And it's like, actually, we all can. I mean, I can't, you can't, but like the professional NFL players can. So so I think if the Jets just run like a competent operation here, they can score, I don't know, 20 points. And the defense is going to be good against the run because the Bengals can't run the football anyway. Chase Brown is terrible. And the offensive line, this is not just about Chase Brown. I mean, run through the holes if they're given to you. They're not given to him all that much. And now we're talking about Joe Flacco, and you're sitting there going like, man, I can't believe I laid 6.5 points with Joe Flacco, right? Like you can talk yourself into taking a bunch of points with the Jets. I don't know that you can talk yourself into going, yeah, I think it was the right call. I think it was the right call to lay 6.5 with Joe Flacco.
Here's where I'm at here. Here's where I'm at. as mentioned, very conflicted. And I'm not exaggerating when I say I've changed this pick like multiple times.
Sure.
So it won't surprise anybody that I've changed the pick again to the Jets. But here's the main reason, okay? It's just basic fundamentals of what we do here at times. Bad teams take the points, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they did anything crazy with Joe Flacco and Chase. It was just like screen passes, slant, screen pass, slant. Like maybe the Jets defense can figure out,
out route, timing, just timing the hell out of a 10-yard out.
Just like anything, right? Okay. All right. Jets, plug the nose. Here we are.
Yeah.
Plus 6.5. Go Jets, go.
By the way, I imagine it goes without saying that the Bengals market rating got a significant bump,
of course,
off of last week.
Of course,
yeah, they're 6.5 point favorites. Like, again, we can talk about it in rating terms, or we can talk about it in like they were 5.5 point underdogs.
We went through this discussion without leaving in the fact that a lot of that was based on the Steelers.
Yeah, right? Like, and by the way,
we'll get there. We'll talk about the Steelers in a bit, but like, yeah, a lot of the Bengals, like we picked the Bengals for a reason, and a lot of that reason was based off the Steelers.
Selling the Steelers, yeah. And by the way, the Steelers, again, you can go, it was all the way back in week 1. Steelers and Jets, was there much difference between those two teams back in week 1?
Yeah.
So again, you were talking about an 11-point difference, a 12-point difference with those two teams then go. If I had told you in week 1, like these two teams are going to go to any place on earth, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant that it's Cincinnati, right? Yeah. If I said Pittsburgh and the Jets, you just watched this game. It was crazy. Both teams scored 30 points. They're back and forth. The 60-yard field goal wins it. And I said to you, hey, just so you know that these two teams 8 weeks from now are going to play on back-to-back weeks. And one of them is going to be a 6.5 point underdog, and the other is going to be a 5.5 point favorite. You'd be like, what happened? And if all I had to say to you was like, well, Justin Fields isn't playing, you'd be like, I don't think I care about that. Like, why is that making an 11.5 point difference? And it's like, well, the Steelers, they're, well, I'm like, well, the Steelers are undefeated. And like, no, they've lost like 3 games or 2 games or whatever it is. Doesn't really add up.
We'll get to the Steelers, or there are a couple more games we got to get to ahead of said Steelers. And first up, as the control room having some issues here,
but the Bucs slowed it right down. Yeah,
right. Like, what's going on here? The Bucs are heading to New Orleans, take on the Saints. Bucs and Baker, 4.5 point road favorites. We touched on it a little earlier. My guy Spencer Rattler did not look good at all. Looked a lot more like the old Spencer Rattler against the Bears last week. He almost threw like 3 picks in a row before finally it was like the Bears were like, all right, fine. If you want to throw us a pick, the 4th time we'll catch this one and actually pick you off. Thank you, Spence. Yeah. But here's what I'll say. Okay. The Bucs on the flip side, I feel like Baker, they just got steamrolled by the Lions, right? Like that was just more about the Lions on the get back, the injuries, I think, catching up to Tampa as Mike Evans was back, made a couple plays and then goes out again. Like they have no receivers. There's just so much going on with the Bucs, and this is not a good spot here. I'm on the Saints plus the 4.5 points, more so because I think I'm not going to hold. I think what Spencer Rattler had been doing prior to last week, I don't think that just goes away in 1 week, as you mentioned, in a tough place to play like Chicago, right? So going back home, much more friendlier confines. I assume they'll play a lot better. You're getting 4.5 points with the home dog in a divisional matchup. I'm always here to take that, especially with the team like the Bucs that are not playing, at their highest level. I think we were talking about this earlier about them trying to get to their bye week, right? And so that might be a thing there. So give me the 4.5 points with the Saints here.
God, you beat me to it, Shell. You son of a. Yeah, man. And that's the thing. Like Baker Mayfield is in the conversation for MVP, not because the team is a juggernaut, because he's like pulling stuff out of the fire on a week-to-week basis. And so when they go to Detroit on Monday night to face a team that just lost last week and usually does not take well to losing, it's inevitable You can't just not lose, but like the next week you can certainly like put forth an aggressive effort. And I don't even know if the Lions played particularly well in that Monday night game, by the way. I thought Jared Goff, it was not his finest hour. But again, we talked about it. You mentioned it, right? The bye week, and next week is the bye week for the Buccaneers. And so, last week we sort of looked at it going like, well, if there's a blemish on your resume and you're 5-2, and it's like, well, we lost to Detroit and Philadelphia, you'd be like, okay, like that's a pretty nice little run here. Doesn't mean you just get to beat the Saints, because they, wouldn't be the blemish that those other teams are. And so I agree with you, right? You get this scenario where the Saints, who, like I said, were overrated from a market perspective going to Chicago last week. By the way, Chicago was also underrated. This scenario has the Saints getting kind of kicked back, off the curb here, down below 30 in their rating. And so, they've been competitive against San Francisco, Arizona, all of these teams at home, obviously beating the Giants at home a week before the Giants, beat the, was it the Eagles? How did that order go? Yeah, it was Saints, then Eagles, and then Broncos. So, so the point is that Giants team's actually been playing pretty good, and, they beat that team. I think they can beat the Buccaneers this week, right? Again, as much as Rattler had a couple of, dicey throws there, he was in a scenario where they're trailing for much of the game, and he kind of got them back into that game. And it was a very sort of, speaking of respectable losses, right? Kind of a respectable loss. And so, I think that this is a prime spot. The Saints are absolutely going to be back in the round robin underdog moneyline parlay this week, because I think they beat the Buccaneers, and this division gets tighter and tighter and tighter, with my Carolina Panthers being the only team that won from the NFC South last week. Look out for the Panthers. No, I don't know. The reality is that it's still possible that all of these teams in the NFC South are just thoroughly mid. Yeah. Right. It's just, we didn't expect the Panthers to be a little bit better than they are. We didn't expect the Saints to be a little better than they are. And then the Buccaneers have obviously sort of fallen on hard times from an injury perspective. And as we talked about earlier, the Falcons are just falconing things, right?
Yeah. Give me the points there with the New Orleans Saints. I will be not taking the points in our next game, even though there's 14 points to be taken. I am laying said 14 points with the Indianapolis Colts, who have to be hosting the Tennessee Titans, because I don't know what other team that I'd be so confidently saying I will lay 14 points against, but it's definitely the Titans. But also the flip side of that is the Colts are just rolling. Daniel Jones balling, Jonathan Taylor balling, the whole offense just on an absolute roll. And whether they are legit or not, the Titans, we know, are not. They stink, right? They got blown out. And hey, the ask is to cover 14 points, and I get that. Yeah. But at the same time, Cam Ward just been playing super loose with the ball. The Colts have a better defense than I would like to think. The Colts are just a better team than New England. They have a better defense than New England. They're just a better overall team. Titans just cooked. I'm going to lay the 14 points. And if it's a 2-touchdown game and this pushes, all right, no problem. But I can't be sitting here being like, yep, go Titans. Again, the quote of the season.
Yeah.
Let's keep it a buck. We ass.
Yeah.
Close.
And the betting version of that is just that the rules do not apply to the Titans. They haven't applied for a year and a half now. And again, I will cite that frustration of the Cardinals game every week if I have to, because it's just such a fluke. It's just such a criminally ridiculous fluke that the Cardinals lost that game. And
it sums up the Blue Jays run for me too, because I came in on the Monday to work like, hey, what happened in the NFL yesterday?
That's right.
What?
Wait, what happened? Yeah, I got distracted. I got distracted about being so sad about that. Listen, I partake in Colts games, especially of this nature, more in the prop market, and certainly just cheering on my guy Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
Right? Go Jonathan Taylor, go. That's basically my entire stance on the Colts. Last week, you and I talked about not really understanding, and we referenced the Chargers part of this too, not really understanding the line as much as we pride ourselves in knowing what the deal is with these lines. We were I don't really get why this isn't at least a pick 'em. And it got to a point where I was like, this is so weird that screw it. I'm just going to take the over. And the over, if you thought the Colts money line or point spread was an easy win with the Colts last week, I would like to introduce you to the over in that game, which like cashed in like early in the third quarter. It was like the only bet that was easier than the Colts winning. So I don't know that the Titans can partake in the way that the Chargers did as sort of just, okay, we're going to do some stuff. But, I don't know. I'm not putting that Colts up in the Chiefs territory. I'm just sort of saying, like, if I think the Chiefs are going to make the AFC Championship and there's going to be sort of a wonky team that nobody saw coming, I still think it could be those Colts. I also have to sort of say, like, Raiders and Titans might be similarly bad as we talked about last week. And it's like, the Raiders went into Indianapolis and got their absolute doors blown off. So, like, why can't the Colts do the Titans do the exact same thing at the hands of the Colts? So, yeah, I think I've retired finally. The new coach bump, they couldn't do it. So, like, the rules do not apply. They are rated 20 out of 100. Like, that's the floor. Like, you can't get lower than that without being historically bad. And, normally we see that on a week-to-week basis in like week 15, 16, 17. There's been a bunch of injuries to some team, yada, yada, yada. No, just largely fully healthy and just still terrible. The rules do not apply to the Titans.
Yeah.
So do whatever you want with this game. People.
Fair enough.
Do whatever you want.
Fair enough. No arguments here. And as we wind down on the week 8 festivities here, we move on to Sunday night football action. Green Bay Packers laying 3 points on the road in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. Packers won last week on the road. They didn't cover. It was an ugly game for them. The offense was kind of sluggish. Some big time defensive plays really helped them get that win last week against Arizona. But this to me comes down to the Steelers, and we've been circling on the Steelers for a while, calling them frauds or whatever their record is in real life versus just what they actually are. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this to me is a weight class thing where I just think LaFleur versus Tomlin's operation here. I don't know. I like the Packers in this one, and it's tough for me to lay 3 points on the road, but I think the Packers, despite their offensive quote unquote issues, and I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah,
it's tough for me here, but I'm going to lay the points with the Packers. It's tough because listen, the Steelers at home, if they play well, it's the Steelers at home as underdogs.
It reeks. It just is filthy reekage of the Steelers coming through here.
Yep.
Raj against the Packers, right? Like angry Raj, right? Bitter Raj. Remember Raj against the Jets? Yeah. Like Raj loved beating the Jets. And again, you don't just get to because you want to, right? But like you're getting 3 points. This Packers team's played 3 road games this season, right? Lose outright at Cleveland. Oof. Probably should have lost if they hadn't have just barely pulled off the tie against Dallas.
Yep.
And then, frankly, probably could have, let's say at the very least, let's use the could word, could have lost against the Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett. And you're telling me that, like, Tomlin, like, cheerleader Tomlin just being like, boys, motivation. We lost to the Raj, and we lost to the Bengals. You guys are a disgrace. And, like, just... I'm sorry, like it's just close your eyes and hit the button on the Steelers, and like maybe the line goes up and you get maybe that hook because people are in love with the Packers, right? Like they are right there as kind of the I would say sort of tied for, but certainly the second rated team in the NFL. The reality is they didn't cover last week. They didn't cover the week before against the Joe Flacco, who definitely didn't know the plays in Green Bay. And they didn't cover before the bye week, in that aforementioned tie with the Cowboys. And so like eventually, like I'm going to need the Packers to cover some games before I give them the regard that their rating is sort of suggesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, like again, that's the fun part about betting, I think, is the going like, all right, we can just absolutely dog trash the like Steelers one week. And then the very next week be like, it's kind of a really good spot for the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Like a really, really good spot for the Steelers.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting spot for the Steelers, but I'm going to watch it and be disappointed in myself and just fuel my hatred even more for Aaron Rodgers. That's what's going to happen.
I know. I can't believe I'm going to be like betting on Aaron Rodgers this week.
And we got one last game here to get through on our edition of the Clutch Picks podcast. We got the Commanders heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, talking about big boy spreads, the Chiefs laying 10.5 points. And I've been hesitant on my Chiefs love. I've been hesitant. I've slowed down on my laying the points with the Chiefs. And you had to talk me into laying the big time points with the Chiefs against the Raiders, saying just do it. And the score ended up being 31-0 against the Raiders.
And could have been higher.
Could have been. I looked up at one point. I have Patrick Mahomes in fantasy. You start 2 QBs. I look up. I'm like, wait, it's a third quarter and they've taken him out of the game. I'm like, Andy Reid just doing a solid for his boy Pete
Gardner
Carroll
Minshew.
for sure. No, but he took him out in the third quarter.
I know. I was like, what is Gardner Minshew doing here? I was like, oh yeah. Like, you've got a team Pete. Like, it's one thing to be like, all right, couple of drives for Minshew like in the fourth. But just looking at the other team going like, they don't have it.
They don't got it.
We're good.
It's so funny. So here we are laying 10.5 points on Monday night with the Chiefs. And this more to me is, the Chiefs, they brought back Rashee Rice and they force fed him 2 touchdowns. And I get it. They can roll their offense out and look more like the team they thought they would have. Cool. Yeah. This to me is more about the Commanders, and they're just banged up. No wide receivers for them, or hoping to have someone come back. But as of what I've seen lately, I still don't see any help coming back. Jaden Daniels is banged up again, this time with a hamstring injury. That's not good. And their defense can't stop anyone. It's not a good thing for your defense if you can't stop anyone and you're playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So I'll lay the 10.5 points. I don't really like it, but if there's a side that I prefer to be on, that's the side I'm going to be on here. As I think this is more like they're going to have a run here of running up the score, puffing out their chest to kind of be like, hey, we're here. We're still here. Still goes through us. They're going to run that for a couple weeks.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not going to, I said on my podcast on Tuesday, I think the current iteration of the Chiefs is, now that everybody is back and going, I think this is the best the Chiefs have ever been.
Yeah. Interesting.
Defense and offense combination, right? The idea that the offense isn't just reliant on hucking the ball deep to Tyreek Hill. And that's why they, traded Tyreek Hill, because the defense wasn't very good, and that the offense, as great as it was reliant on that connection. And they lost that game in overtime to the Bengals years ago. And they're like, we got to get more efficient, essentially, which is crazy to think from an offensive perspective. And, they've won a couple of Super Bowls since then, so it's not like it was a rebuild. But now that you go, all right, you've got all these different pieces back, and it's Xavier Worthy, a first-round wide receiver, and Rashee Rice, a first-round wide receiver. Yeah. And, like, that opens things up for Trav, and you can go a year or two, back with Trav when he's not dealing with, like, 2 people around him all the time.
Facts.
And they're, even just look at the running back situation. It's like, all right, like it was so grim that they were like, all right, we'll bring Kareem Hunt back. And Kareem Hunt has like never runs for more than like 3 yards per carry in like any game, or certainly not getting to 4 yards per carry. But they just keep using him because they're like, we don't really have a better option, because Isaiah Pacheco, obviously showed flashes in that rookie season, but he's kind of not really been all that great. And then meanwhile, they've got this secret weapon in Brashard Smith that they just run like plays for in a very specific way that just get 8 yards every time they run the play to him. Yeah. And you're just like, damn. And then the defense, like, again, there's going to be a time here coming up where like Chris Jones doesn't have it anymore. And other guys, like some of the, bigger names on that defense, particularly in the secondary, don't have it anymore, but they are still at the back end of their prime. And it's just like, yeah, they lost a couple of games when a lot of these dudes weren't necessarily available. And so I get why the market is treating the Chiefs the way that they have, because for this number to be this way, and it's not just this number, because you could easily say, well, Washington, like the rating for Washington has gone down. That's why look-ahead lines are relevant. That's why we look ahead to the look-ahead lines. And Kansas City going to Buffalo next week.
Okay.
Are 1.5 point favorites in Buffalo. Now,
Okay.
Shell, you might be sitting there, or somebody listening to this might be saying there, well, like, yeah, the Chiefs are like the better team than Buffalo, and I understand why they'd be 1.5 point favorites, and it's only 1.5, and so like that can't be that much. Even at the Chiefs' best over the last couple of years, when Buffalo has gone to Kansas City, Buffalo has been the road favorite in those games. So even just think of that, right? The table's being turned from a road home situation, and now the Chiefs are the road favorite.
Interesting.
That is what the market thinks of the Chiefs. So the scary part is that from a number perspective, the Chiefs are now rated. They were 71 last week when they were laying 10.5 or whatever it was to the Raiders. They are 76 this week against the Commanders. Like, it doesn't take much for the market who, 3 weeks ago when they were facing the Giants had them in the 50s or at least the very low 60s to look at this team and be like, yeah, like it's on now, because it is very much on now when it comes to the Chiefs. So I get it, like the idea, and listen, we did it last week. I talked you into it last week. This number appears to be a Marcus Mariota number because from the Commanders rating perspective, this has them at 45.
Yeah.
But all those guys have Q's next to their name. Daniels has a Q next to his name. Debo and McLaurin both have Q's next to their name and are both expected to practice this week.
Interesting.
And so you go, okay, well, what if the Commanders actually are healthy? Well, for one, that number looked like 5.5 was the look ahead line last week.
Yeah.
5.5, right?
Yeah.
So like, let's just start there. And so even if you were bummed out about the Commanders and you were super pumped about the Chiefs, just shifting, even the number to like 50 out of 100 for the Commanders, 52, 53. Like now we're talking about a line that's probably closer to 7.
Yeah.
So like, I let's put it this way. If you bet the Commanders right this second at plus 10.5.
Yeah.
You are either just getting the Commanders at plus 10.5 with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. I would imagine probably Debo and maybe McLaurin.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's not bad.
Yeah.
And if you're getting Jaden Daniels, you're getting probably 3 points of value too. You're probably getting a line that's going to close, 7.5. Maybe, 7's maybe a stretch because again, like the market loves the Chiefs as they should. So yeah, like I think that if you just had to make a bet on this game, like you're grabbing the 10.5 now with Washington and then just kind of hoping for the best, because as we've seen with Marcus Mariota, obviously coming in midway through and having to play in a shootout with the Cowboys is a lot different than like having the reps leading up to a game. It hasn't been that bad when Marcus Mariota has had time to prepare with the ones and getting the number one snaps and all of that sort of thing. So we'll see how this shakes down, man. The Monday night thing is obviously good for the Commanders. It gives all these guys one extra day, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I also think it gives these guys added motivation to want to come back and play if you do have the Q as opposed to the D beside your name, right? Like it's Monday Night Football against the Chiefs. It's prime time. It's big. You can play. Probably want to play in that game.
For sure.
But yeah, big week. And of course, before we get to that Monday night action, of course, you will have a full, deeper breakdown available for the peoples. Where can said peoples find your information, my dude?
Yeah, we made it well over 90 minutes before we mentioned the sort of headliner from last week, which was, listen, I preach responsible betting, using every bet that you make as a single bet. When I tell you, hey, we're going to parlay something together, it's really rare, and it usually involves a round robin. We talked about the round robin underdog money line parlay, and all of that stuff is sort of, the idea is for the round robin is, we're really just trying to win 3 out of 5. It is essentially kind of one bet there, and sometimes you accidentally run into all 5 and you win a ton of money. Just for fun, call it a marketing tool, call it the thing that is sort of going to keep people coming back, the thing that maybe if it hits, people are going to get drawn to what you do. And one of those things is for my player props article that I write, again, 10 player props, bet them individually, et cetera, et cetera. At the very end, we kind of put some stuff in there just for the little candy, little dessert, right? There's a round robin anytime touchdown parlay in there, but moreover, there is a same game plus parlay, which is using a bunch of alternative yardage and reception and whatever props, 3 or 4 of them on a weekly basis, throw them all together in a parlay, and maybe they accidentally win. Shell, they accidentally won last week, 250 to 1
Let's go.
And so the pains over at the window are just absolutely pumped. Again, we don't build the entire boat out of the same game parlay, out of the same game parlay plus, but it is the sort of little candy at the end of the healthy meal, as if you can call betting on the NFL a healthy meal, that, again, sometimes it just ends up working. So we've been celebrating all week. We're probably going to be commiserating next week. It doesn't mean everybody needs to house the same game plus parlay with some extravagant amount of money. It will probably never happen again. That being said, it did happen last year as well during Thanksgiving. But you can't plan on these sorts of things. But it is just this fun thing that's happened over at the window over this last little bit. And of course, you can go to Substack, type in the window sports betting, and you'll find us there.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Worth a little sprinkle, right? A little sprinkle never hurt anybody, right? No,
hell no.
I mean,
not last week.
Definitely not last week. That's pretty good for sure. And as mentioned, my name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube. It is called the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. Hope you enjoyed. We're into week 8. We're on a roll here, trying to keep the good times moving here on the podcast. So thank you all for tuning in. Bless us with a like, a share, all that other fun stuff. Really appreciate it. And as I always say, I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.